Hey, it's Alex from BoardGameCo, and today we are doing a different video, a first of what I hope to be many, because ultimately, like everything I do on this channel, the goal for me is having fun, and this is a BoardGameCo Reacts video, which, if and when I do that in the future, I guarantee you will always be because I find it fun. And this one in particular is BoardGameCo Reacts Should You Buy That? Now, more specifically, Quackalo put out a video today being when I'm watching it, you're probably watching this about a week later, called Top 5 Board Games Still in Shrink. Now, some of this he's played, some of them he hasn't, but ultimately it's just about top 5 board games on his shelf that are still in shrink, and it inspired a few people in his Patreon community or his Discord community. It inspired a few people in his Discord community to go out and buy a few of these. And I got a comment from a Labor Schnitzel saying he can't buy these games until Alex chips in on whether it should or shouldn't buy them because Jesse inspires him and I bring him back down to earth. So I am happy to do that. I am Alex from BoardGameCo, Crusher of Dreams. That is my role, that is my title, and fun fact, Labor Schnitzel, I don't actually know where you're from, but do you know that in Judaism, in I don't know if it's Yiddish or something else, but schnitzel means breaded chicken. A piece of breaded chicken is schnitzel. Fun fact. Anyways, we're all digressing here. Timestamps down below. Speaking of which, Quackalope, I will note, Jesse, you did not put timestamps in your video, so I have to have a little sidebar on the side of my screen for when I want to jump to the relevant time points in this video. But the point of this video really is, aside from this whole entire trolling nature of the video, the point of this video is something I've been wanting to do for a while but haven't yet had the opportunity to bring into the channel, and I plan on doing it more, is the value aspect of buying games that aren't Kickstarters. I talk a lot about value in Kickstarters. I talk a lot about buying the right games, making the right choices in terms of trying to maintain the monetary value of your collection, in terms of not spending $20 on a game just because a momentary whim caught you and now you're out $20, but being able to rotate your collection, to be able to turn games into more games, to take games that didn't work out for you and turn them into games that will work out for you. And that applies to retail just as much as it does Kickstarter. It applies to my buying decisions of games just as much as Kickstarter. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is watching Quackalope and his enthusiasm and his love for these games, and then hopefully dashing just a tad of cold water all over the dreams of whether you should or shouldn't buy it. But before we get into, 2.5 minutes into this video, haven't yet started the reacts part, I want to be very clear here. If you like a game and you want to get it, the resale value is just one factor of many to consider. I certainly consider it, but I also will push it off to the side if I have enough of a reason. So a good reason offhand, just to give you one reason of many to ignore everything I'm about to say, is if you find your tastes align with Jesse's, then that is a good reason to ignore what I'm saying, because there are multiple price points in play on board games. One of those price points is the price to get the game. And if you believe you will like that game, if that game has a good chance of making it in your collection, then does the price point really matter? Try to get it for as cheaply as you can, price shop, look around, of course, but then get the game because it's fun. Why not? For me, I like to go through a lot of games, and so picking games that I believe are more likely to stay in my collection or are more likely to hold their value, those are relevant decisions I make. And so with that in mind, let's go through this video, let's go through this idea. Again, to be clear, you want to buy a game, buy a game. This is just my thought process in terms of how I approach games, and sadly I will start this video off by saying that I have a certain overlap with Jesse's tastes, that's for sure. But I also have enough of a non-overlap that by no means a game that Jesse likes, for me, by no means is that an immediate try. It doesn't mean it's not a stay away from, not at all, but it's not an immediate try either. And with that said, let's jump into it.
Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today I figured I would take it a little bit easier. Instead of 12 hours of editing on this video with components and B-roll and games sprawled across the table, I thought I'd do more of a BoardGameCo style video where the games I can't even film B-roll of because they're unopened. You saw in...
So that's Jesse calling me out with my lack of editing on my videos, a lack of editing you will find suspiciously present in this own video. But yeah, you call my name, I will do a react video on your video calling you out.
I have played and have experiences with all of these games. There's a reason why.
So I was a little unclear on that, Jesse. Just for your own clarification, later in the video you seem to imply that Detective City of Angels you haven't played, and Clank you have had experiences with the base. I'm not entirely sure what you have or haven't played. I'll just note it was a little unclear. For others watching, just because he has some of these in Shrink, I know he's certainly played some of these games for sure, but he now has his own copy or whatnot. For instance, Forgotten Waters, he played on Discord or whatnot. So the played status of these games is certainly in question.
Quicker and yet still rambling video. So, 5 games. Here, I'm going to go through Brutal Kingdom, Space Empires, Forgotten Waters, Detective, City of Angels, and Clank Legacy. Starting here with the smallest one on the very top, a game by Cosmos, a game of beastly betrayal, Brutal Kingdom by Michael Redneck. This is a game that is gonna stay in my collection. This is a very interesting little
So this is the first one I'm going to jump into. Brutal Kingdoms is the first of the games that I'm going to unfortunately explain why I think you shouldn't buy it, with the caveat that, again, if you've heard from people whose opinions you trust, then go for it. If you just want to go for it, then go for it. But my logic basically here comes into play with the idea that Brutal Kingdoms is a 6.6 on BoardGameGeek. By no means ratings on BoardGameGeek should be an infallible line in the sand of what not to cross or whatnot. I have games that are in that range in my collection. Only a few though, because at the end of the day, the average rating does have an indicator. You want to argue whether something deserves to be in the top 100, we can have that discussion. You want to argue whether something's an 8.3 or a 7.9, we can talk. But if something's a 6.6, it's usually indicative of enough people saying this game did not exceed whatever bar I want to have in gaming. Are you going to find 10s in there? Of course you will. But statistically speaking, it's less likely. Do you really want to buy that 3-star toaster on Amazon just because a few people gave it a 5? Or do you want to search for the 5-star toaster, the 4.5-star toaster? Again, it doesn't mean don't get the games, but it certainly should be a factor in your buying decisions, assuming you view, like I do, money as a limited commodity that we're all trying to balance. If you can get every game you already want and you want to get Brutal Kingdom, by all means. But from there, let's talk about how you should try to get Brutal Kingdom if you do want it, and why you shouldn't buy it. So a good indicator, something I tend to look at on any game when I'm trying to buy it for myself and get a feel for it, is this game right now is $12.33 on Amazon over here. It is $5 in the secondhand market, does not hold its value at all, and nobody's buying these $5 copies because once you factor in shipping, it's cheaper to just get it from Amazon anyway. But it's not going to be a game that sells particularly well. There are 61 people trading it and 14 people who want it. Just to be clear, that means 61 people have said, I am trading it. Now, lots of people don't engage with the trade system at all, but from those who do, 61 people said, I want it gone, and 14 people said, bring it to me. Now, if you click through to that 14, which I already did, but let's do it again. If you click through that 14, you'll see that from the ones that are listed in the US, but maybe 5 or 6 of them are not US, a few are unlisted. So you have maybe 10 people in the US who actually are willing to take this game off your hands in trade, which means 2 things that you should be conscious of. Number 1, if you buy this game and don't want it, it's likely to sit on your shelf unplayed, just taking up space, not a game you can turn in and get your money back in any way, not a game that you're going to have an easy time trading because 61 people are trying to get rid of their copies with only 10 to 14 who are actually able or willing to take that copy off their hands. And number 2, it means if you do want it, why don't you start trading? Get into the trading world of BoardGameGeek or of BoardGameCo for that matter, because this is a game that if you want it, you can join those 14. You can become the 15th person who's trying to take it off the hands of 61 people trying to get rid of their copies. In other words, this is a buyer's market because the buyers, there's 61 people trying to sell theirs in a matter of speaking and whatnot, and only 14 who want it. That means if you want this game, if you are intrigued by this game, don't buy it because it's going to be deadweight. And if you are intrigued by this game, get involved in the trading world of BoardGameCo, of BoardGameGeek. Get involved into what trading is, of rotating your collection, because that is actually a great way to get titles that generally don't hold their value. If other people don't want it and you do, that puts you at a bit of an advantage in a manner of speaking. So Brutal Kingdoms unfortunately gets a BoardGameCo seal of don't really get it unless you can get an amazing deal, either monetary or trading on that game.
To secure victory points and take out or assassinate Kingdom, but becoming harder and harder to find as time goes on. And so I ended up ordering a copy. I was hoping to and still intend to bring coverage of it on the channel, but since I...
So a few things over there. First of all, he's mentioned how it's getting harder and harder to get as time goes on. That is a mindset that only really applies when you look at games available in retail only and you don't look at the used market, because the used market's a little different. Because in retail, the games that tend to be more available are the ones that either are overstocked or games that are generally well loved, well received, and will continuously be reprinted. Games that didn't do well won't be, and so those games over time become harder and harder to find. But on the secondary market, those games are actually a great deal because nobody wants them. So this concept of hard to find games, if you find yourself constantly attracted to hard to find games, join the secondary market. You're doing yourself a favor and you will be able to get a lot of games. The second thing that he touched upon is he wants to bring coverage to his channel of this game. If he does, kudos to him, kudos to you, Jesse, because a game that has this little of an audience is a video that's not likely to garner a lot of views. That is truly, and keep in mind, I do this for fun. Clearly, this entire video is for fun. But at the same time, if your content isn't viewed, it hurts the algorithm. If you put out videos that don't get clicks, YouTube does kind of start not promoting you as much. A single video won't hurt you, but it's a game you always have to be on top of. There's a lot of tricks around that. You can bundle a bunch of small stuff together into a single video, or you could just not cover small stuff, or you could do Patreon exclusive videos and put them, unlisted so it doesn't hurt the algorithm. There's lots of ways to provide coverage on games you want to, but sadly, a sad reality of being in the YouTube space is I've had to make decisions about what to cover, not always based on my own personal interest level, but what I believe will do well or won't do well for that matter.
I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and play it since then. Another game that I'm going to have to blame on Matt is going to be Space Empires 4X. This is a GMT game.
So Space Empires 4X is one that has been around for a long time. I believe it's currently in its 4th implementation. And if you've been following what I've been saying so far, that means you already know this is a game that does fairly decently. Because GMT has this P500 system where they constantly reprint stuff, but this is one that has been reprinted. It's in multiple iterations. You can buy it directly from GMT for roughly $75, or you can head on over to Amazon and get it for, I believe it's $75. This link is a little outdated. If we click on that link, no, closer, it's $69. So it's $69, not 65, not 67, whatever, but it's $70 effectively. Not a bad price. GMT is 75, like I said. You can buy in the secondhand market for in the range of 67-ish, 65-ish, or whatnot. And this is a game where, looking at that 4 trade ratio, we have 139 people trading their copies, 446 people wanting copies. Or in other words, 3 times as many people want the game as there are trading it. So many of those people, best case scenario, if you crossed everything off perfectly, best case scenario, you still have 300 people who are left wanting. Or in other words, this is a game that you will have a much easier time getting rid of trading it for something else. And so this is a game that I actually would recommend getting it. If you are intrigued by it, now I will say on a personal level, understand what you're getting yourself into. This might look like a fun game, but this is also what you are playing with. Now, if this image does not scare you off, by all means. But for sure, look into reviews, because this is a this is a 4X game. It's well rated at a 7.7, which is definitely doing well. It has maintained its love or whatnot. People enjoy this game, but visually it is what it is, which may or may not be a problem for you. From the marketplace stance, like I said, it will hold its value. It's a safe option. This is not Kickstarter hold its value, to be clear. Kickstarter, because of the more limited nature of the runs and the exclusives, can very often hold their value above and beyond what you paid for it. In retail, hold your value is a different conversation. In retail, hold your value generally means it won't lose as much of its value. You might pay $75 for it and turn around and sell it for $65. You might pay $75 for it and turn around and trade it for another $75 game and then lose on the shipping. There's usually more of a small burn rate or loss involved, but if you pick well, you can continuously run a long collection, a collection that has longevity, switching out new titles and new titles and new titles, and effectively paying a small rental fee as titles pass through your hands. And that brings us back to Jesse, who's still talking about Space Empires, and so let's go ahead and jump over to Forgotten Waters.
Hit that 500 mark, printed, delivered, and I haven't had it over here.
I have to do the timestamps.
Forgotten Waters. Oh, a beloved game. A game that is This game I have absolutely fallen in love with. And you're probably confused. You're saying, how have you fallen in love with this game? You haven't played it. It's still on Shrink. I know, that's the whole...
So basically, he goes on to say that he's been playing this in Discord, because I guess maybe this video is a lie, because I'm saying BoardGameCo reacts, but it's actually BoardGameCo watched the video, did his research, and then is watching it again on camera. So maybe it's a bit of a lie, but I'm going to stick with the title, because the title's important. After all, this video is titled 5 Games Still in Shrink, and that would lead you to certain assumptions which are not true. So clickbait's another thing on YouTube, by the way. Clickbait works for a reason. That's a video for another time. I try to keep it to a minimum, but I'm certainly not averse to a tiny bit of it, especially when it means a better title. In any case, I digress. Back to Forgotten Waters, let's jump over to Board Game Geek, where you by now know what I am doing over here. This is a game that is $56 on Amazon, roughly. Those links are always in or out of date. This is a game where it's on the secondary market. It's selling for $54. So you can see over here that this $56 game is selling for $54. That is a minimum burn rate. Obviously, shipping's into account, taxes, all these things, but you can see pretty clearly this is a game that is doing fairly well. It's a game that is wanted. And part of that feeds into this 20 versus 317. Now, this is a good time to talk about absolute versus ratio. There are two numbers to take into account when you're looking at trade ratios or trade absolute numbers. One is the ratio of how many versus how many, and two is the absolute number. So for instance, Space Empires has a ratio of about 3-1 versus Forgotten Waters has a ratio of about 15-1. But absolute value is another thing to take into account. But with only 20 people trading this game, that is a lot of people that will be left unable to get a copy of Forgotten Waters. Which means if you decide to get this game, and if it's not a fit for you, then you can trade it. There are lots of people who are interested in this game. You could ask for a premium. That's something at BoardGameCo, what we do from the trading side, when the trading side of the business, what we do is we ask for a premium on games that are harder to get. Because it's not the same as buying a game online. There's a different economy when you're trading, and that economy is often people who don't want to spend money, but have plenty of games on their shelf that are doing nothing else. So if you want Forgotten Waters, your choices are spending $56 or doing something to distinguish yourself from amongst these 317 people. And often that means offering more value. Because 317 people, I can guarantee you, 200 of them are willing to offer you an equal trade. But there's plenty of them willing to do that. So a few people are willing to offer you a premium trade. At BoardGameCo, we offer a premium for high demand games, and we ask for that same premium in exchange when somebody else wants that high demand game. And this is something you can do as well. You can effectively buy Forgotten Waters, give it a shot, try it out, and if you don't like it, you may well be able to trade it for, I don't know, Power Grid plus Castle of Mad King von Ludwig, getting a better value back, assuming you're not as picky about which games you're getting, but basically, trading is a thing. It's something you can take advantage of, and it's how BoardGameCo started. It's that aspect of looking at the economy of a marketplace and understanding the supply and demand behind it. Granted, not everyone's going to be happy with you, but there's 20 people trading this game and 370 people who want it, and that is something that you can take into account. So Forgotten Waters is one that I do highly recommend, and we apparently got City of Angels, so I should jump back there. But Forgotten Waters is one that I do highly recommend. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I am personally interested in myself. The only reason I haven't gotten it is because it really seems like you need at least 4, and at least until COVID's over, I just don't see that really happening with myself and my game group. So from there, let's head out over to...
over here. Detective City of Angels. I've had this game in Shrink since, wow, I guess since last October.
Last October. Detective City of Angels. Again, by now you know the drill, and this is easy. This stuff's pretty easy to do. Well, whatever. Any case, Detective City of Angels at $130, $120 to $170 price range. There are expansions. If I click through to them, I could probably find out exactly what the difference is. But again, we have that same Forgotten Waters ratio of 19 versus 339. That is a good number. I don't feel the need to repeat everything I said until now, so I will stick with the idea that if you are interested in Detective City of Angels, by all means, get it and try it. But what I will do in order to add something new to the conversation is by getting these games and leaving them in Shrink on your shelf, you're not doing yourself any favors. What you're doing is you're buying a commodity while it's hot. And again, they're games. I understand. Whenever people watch my videos and think I'm just like about the money, no, I'm about the games. I am surrounded by games. But I want to build that collection in a way that's sustainable. I want to get as many games as possible. It is my love of games that makes me look at them as a commodity because I can get more with limited funds. And so going back to Detective City of Angels, if you buy this game and you leave it sitting on your shelf unplayed, if you leave it in Shrink while you put out videos talking about how much you love it, although that actually works because then technically you're monetizing the game, but if you aren't a YouTuber and you talk about how much these games, you love them and they're on your shelf and they're just sitting there, you're effectively letting the marketplace slowly catch up. Because a year from now, it's not going to be, what was that number? It's not going to be 19 versus 339. A year from now, it might be 50 versus 400. It might be 70 versus 300. Over time, inherently, as time goes on, the market shifts and people who wanted the game have now acquired it and are now passing it on to the next person. That trade ratio over time will always shift downwards. It will always be better or favor you as a game is hot. How fast and how quickly it shifts downwards will change, will adjust depending on, how popular the game is, how well it's rated. There are games that can be on the marketplace for 3 years and still hold a good ratio, but I guarantee you that ratio is still better today. So when you get a game, this is why I constantly talk about in Kickstarter, when you get a Kickstarter game, pull off the shrink, try it, see if it's a game for you. Because if it is, by all means, keep it. Keep the expensive game on your shelf. I'm happy for you to own all the things you like. But if it's not a game for you, take advantage and flip it while the market is hot. Take advantage and get a different game while you are still able to take advantage of the current marketplace. And with that, we move to...
Lastly, we have Clank. Acquisitions Incorporated. What a massive box. I saved some big boxes for the very end.
So this is the last game, and I am fortunately able to add something new to this conversation. Not because of the ratio. Sadly, the ratio, first of all, an 8.9 and 101. By the way, just be clear, that's insane. This game's about to break the top 100, which not many Legacy games have done. Obviously, Pandemic Legacy has, and its expansion, and probably Season 3, Season 0, whatever it is. But anyways, this one has 20 versus 401. So by now you're saying, well, that's awesome. I should totally get this because I can easily trade it away. Not a problem. I'll buy it. I'll buy it, trade for it, whatever, try it, and then I'll sell it. Which, of course, is horribly wrong because, unlike the other games on this list, this is a legacy game. That means as soon as you break that shrink, that's not true, as soon as you play your first game, of Clank Legacy, you have hurt the tradability of this game forever. If you think it's easy to sell or get back your value on a traded legacy game, even after only one play, you are wrong. It is not easy to do that. Legacy games only hold their value as long as they're unplayed. Unopened is fine. Open versus unopened is fine. Played versus not played is not fine on a legacy game. So, now is time to decide whether you are willing to commit to an 8.9 game on BoardGameGeek. Are you interested enough in the Clank series to give this a shot? Have you tried Clank? Do you like Clank? There's something about this game which ranges in price anywhere from $50 to $100 depending on whether it's in print or not. There was a point when this was $50 at Walmart, so you can always be on the lookout for sales, which is another conversation. But if you're not in a rush, if you have plenty of other unplayed games, then by all means hold off and wait until it's back in stock, until you see another sale for $70 somewhere or something like that. But for right now, it's expensive. It's providing you a limited number of plays, and that might well be worth it. In fact, it's worth it enough that I have it on my shelf, opened, rules read, and all prepped to give it a shot. Because I'm a fan of legacy games. And I've played Clank in space. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And I liked it enough, and I know myself, and I know that legacy, for me, elevates an experience. For me, a legacy game will take a game that's a 7 and make it an 8.5. That does happen. And Clank in Space, for me, was a game that I thoroughly enjoyed, just not enough to continue keeping. But Clank Legacy, I am willing to take that risk on. But understand that a legacy game, resale value and any discussion around it goes out the window. Treat this as a game that is either sitting on your shelf until you eventually one day change your mind and then trade it without playing it, in which case, why'd you really get it? But who knows? Or treat it as a game that will be an experience. Treat it as a game that is akin to going to a movie, going to whatever, having fun in whatever way you so choose. But a legacy game is a very different conversation when it comes to the secondary market, and it's not one where you can reliably rely on selling or trading it for its value. And Jesse's still going here, but I'm basically going to wrap up. I think basically at this point, Jesse asks to comment below with what your in-stream games are, which I'm happy to oblige. Or more specifically, I will tell you that I actually don't have in-stream games, or at least not many, because of the exact reason I just told you. Usually, I get the shrink removed as soon as possible to read the rules, see if I can get it to the table. Sadly, I don't get the games to the table as fast as I would like. They're building up behind me. But generally, right now, I have 2 games in shrink and then a bunch of expansions in shrink. I have Pendulum and Tobago in shrink. Pendulum because it's a copy I plan on reviewing. I need to take the shrink off at some point, actually get it to the table. Tobago is because it's a game that I know that I liked, and I got rid of it a long time ago, and I got it back during COVID, and I just haven't gotten around to removing the shrink Shrink because I already know exactly what the game is, at least for me. And then from there, I have 4 expansions in Shrink. I have Massive Darkness, Gloomhaven, Too Many Bones, and War Chest expansions in Shrink. Expansions are for the same reason. I'm less in a rush to remove the Shrink there, because if it's augmenting a game that I already know I want, a game that I already know that I like, then I'm more than happy to keep an expansion in my collection or whatnot with the Shrink not yet removed. And that's basically it. This has been the first ever BoardGameCo Reacts video. More specifically, BoardGameCo Reacts, should you buy that. There'll be more in this series, whether it's with Jesse and Quackalope, whether it's whenever. I like the idea. We don't really see Reacts videos in the board game space, and I guess technically we just saw Tom Vassell reacting to Tom Vassell being wrong, and we saw Z reacting to Tom Vassell being wrong, so it got a little meta the first time it ever happened, which is, fitting for the board game space. Nonetheless, until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of them, let me know what type of videos you'd like to see. I saw one comment from Labor Schnitzel again, I believe. Maybe it's somebody else, I have to double check. No, it's Vistari, another person in the Discord, who said he wants to see a BoardGameCo Reacts video to people bad-mouthing Come On, which would be amusing, but, hey, if you want to see any sort of videos down below, again, let me know. I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and until next time, I hope you have a good one.